So architecture is like writing. You have to edit it over and over so that it looks effortless. Now, these aren't my words, these are the words of the renowned architect Zaha Hadid. And I think truer words have never been spoken. So this choice of topic of mine triggered an all-out war on my WhatsApp group, which has lots of architects on it, of course. There were heated discussions about what exactly good writing meant, what exactly an architect is supposed to do, and of course, better architect, blew the roof. So why did I choose to speak on this very innocuous yet contentious subject? And the reason is because currently a lot of architects seem to be reluctant to write. I think there are various reasons for that. One of the reasons is because architectural education itself somehow lays a lot of emphasis on graphical skills, drawing and designing. Maybe, it's all linked to lots of visuals. But the other thing is also that there's this modernist thinking that's crept into architecture, like in all arts. And this thinking says that, a particular field should be true to itself and you should not depend on any other field, to make your point. Which means when you see a modern art painting, that painting has to tell you everything about it. Okay? And the same for buildings. So the building should speak for itself. You shouldn't need to write anything about it. Now, these factors and an overall lowering of standards in writing itself have led to this situation where a lot of architects are reluctant to write. So let's go in for some definitions now, because this is what triggered, these are the wars we fought. Who exactly is an architect? So going back to Wikipedia, they got a very, very simple definition. An architect is a person who plans, designs, and oversees the construction of a building. When you're a student of first year architecture, you're always taught that, the word comes from the Greek for archi, which is master or chief, and tekton, which is builder, which means you're the chief builder. And now what exactly is good writing? Now that's not so easy to, sort of pin down because the term itself is very subjective. And as an example in point, I'll take the works of a certain graduate of IIT and IIM whose novels are bestsellers. All the novels have titles with numbers in them. So you know who I'm talking about now. I like his writing, but others, have different views. So it's subjective. So before we move on, let me just explain. This is a clarification. We are not talking about architectural writing. We are not talking about what architects write about typically, which is very often called archi speak. It's a lot of jargon. It's a lot of words like juxtaposition or fenestration. That means windows, by the way. Okay. So we are not talking about that kind of language. That's not the writing I'm telling you that architects should know. In fact, my personal favorite there, okay, is the homogeneity of heterogeneous spaces. Make what you will of that. Now, why exactly do architects need to write well? So there are two principal things that we're going to look at. And the first part is, I would say, the simpler one. Okay. I can score some points in a debate on this easily. And this is the practical side. Okay. This is that side of an architect where, you're expected to do certain things in society. The government expects you to do certain things. Your clients expect certain things. So what are those things? So first of these is that the brief itself. When you set out to design something, you need a brief. The architect is a person who puts together that brief. He takes the client's thoughts and ideas and requirements, puts it all down, okay, and creates this brief which lays out the plan for the project to move forward. Secondly, architects need to write reports of all kinds, including reports about the site, about user requirements, about the context, and so on. What are the future phases required? These are dependent on the architect writing. If you write them properly, you're going to end up designing, hopefully, what's required. Thirdly, writing serves as a formal record of the entire design process. This will, of course, include sketches, notes, and revisions also, which will be used for reference in the future. Then a very important point, especially today, which is for collaboration. Now, on a typical project, you will have all sorts of consultants. So, we are doing this project in Mumbai where we have, a myriad set of construction, consultants. We have a structural consultant, an electrical consultant. We have a mechanical consultant that's for air conditioning. We have a plumbing consultant, which includes water supply, sewage, and sanitation. We have a landscape consultant. We have everybody except a Vastu consultant. The same project I spoke about, we have 37 different departments in the government from whom we take approvals. Okay. And then, of course, there is God himself, the client. Okay. And that itself, sometimes the board of directors, there's a set of clients who each speaks different things. For the collaboration between all of these, writing is very essential. Okay. Now, there's a fifth point also, which is very important, which a lot of architects sort of neglect, and that is the one about regulatory compliance. So you need to prepare documentation which has to outlive you and the project for approvals and permissions, the contracts between various contractors and the client. So this very useful Latin phrase, verba volant, scripta manent, and it very simply means that the spoken word flies away, okay? But the written word stays there forever. And that's what you need to remember. If a project goes the legal way, what you wrote down is what's going to matter. So that's the very clear practical side. You can't really disagree with me on this, okay? So what do architects need to do? They need to develop writing which should be unambiguous and clear. It should be factually correct. It should be concise yet complete. And of course, this is for me, it should be grammatically correct. Now, the tougher one. So the ideological, the philosophical, the theoretical aspects of writing is applicable to architects. Now, writing itself, and here's a clarification. I'm talking about any language here. We are speaking in English, but this is true for all languages. Writing can make you fall in love, okay? It can move you to tears. It can arouse curiosity. It can move mountains. In fact, John F. Kennedy very famously said about Winston Churchill that he mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. He was, of course, referring to that speech, we shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them on the landing grounds, we shall fight them in the mountains, and so on and so forth, where he ended with, we shall never surrender. And, that's a prime example. Then the understanding of a building itself and its description becomes clearer with the description of it. So Charles Correa designed this iconic building in Mumbai called Kanchenjunga. It's a multi-story building block. People have described it as modernist, brutal. We'll not get into that. But that building itself, if you look at the floor plans, a lay person cannot understand it. Most architectural students cannot understand when they just see the plans. But, and why is it? Because, these are multi-level apartments. There are various typologies which all put together. If you write it down, and which is what Charles Correa did, he writes very well. I mean, he used to write very well. So he said, think of it as, lots of two-storied bungalows. And he said, take those bungalows and put them on top of each other, take the prevailing winds into account, and that's the building I've designed. It becomes very easy to understand for everyone. Secondly, for critique and reflection, writing allows you to critique your own work as well as that of others. And architects, or rather we can reflect on the architectural theory, practice, and the social implications of whatever we design. Then, this is very important again. In fact, whether it should have been here or in the first part, I think it's there in both places, for positioning itself. So gaining commissions frequently depends upon the presentations that you make. Writing is the precursor to effective presentation. Everybody who speaks on the stage today will have written something down before they come here and stand and speak to you about it. Moving on, there is engagement. Architects must engage with the public. They must, send their work out. They must communicate with diverse audiences. They shouldn't be in echo chambers. This would include all the articles they write, blogs today, and of course, social media posts. And the final part, and I think this is again very important, is that writing is crucial in shaping the discourse and impact of architecture itself upon society. It increases awareness, it fosters global connectivity, and it establishes architects as thought leaders. So, this is the theoretical side that I'm talking about. There's one more aspect I'm going to touch on it, which again is very important for architects who want to make a name for themselves, who want to be considered good architects. 200 years ago, John Ruskin wrote this collection of 7 essays, which together with a foreword was published as the 7 Lamps of Architecture. It ignited a revolution of sorts in art and architecture in the Western world. About 100 years ago, we had Le Corbusier himself who wrote the 5 points of architecture. And these are very widely disseminated. These principles are known to most architects. He designed the Villa Savoy a few years later, which is a building that embodies all these. You can look at that, you'll never figure out these 5 points. So, because he wrote this pamphlet, we get a full idea of what he tried to say. Moving on, in conclusion, let me state that design is a result of deep thinking. Writing provokes, develops, and strengthens that very thinking process. Remember, writing, like architecture, outlives us humans. And finally, here's a closing thought. It might not be essential for an architect to be a good writer, but the ability to write well could very well distinguish a good architect from a great one. Thank you so much.